Thank you for that nice introduction. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. I'm going to spend some time really developing the difference in the picture from what's going on nationally and what's going on here in Syracuse. And the reason I'm going to start that way is because it's very important because all of you go home and you watch the nightly news and you hear about what's going on in Central California and Florida and New York City, Washington, D.C., and it's not representative of what's going on here in Syracuse. So I'm going to start off going through the national trends and juxtaposing them with what's going on here. So why don't we? So nationally, 2007 was a year of slowdown, particularly in the real estate markets. Sales came down, and we even saw some price concessions for the first time at the national level since 1968. The first time we've ever seen it as long as NAR has been tracking. An important trend here is that we never saw a period of outright price decreases through this entire time period. And what that did is it loaded us up so that by the point we were here in 2000, all of these substantial price increases, up right around 10%, caused consecutive records in terms of the price level. Why don't you go switch to that? Great. Now this is much more representative of what we're hearing about and what's creating these very strong national statistics. This is the Washington market, very slow price growth here, and then just phenomenal price growth, loaded into a 5-year period. And each one of those is important. This was a price record for the Metro DC area in terms of the median price. And then we tacked on double-digit price growth after each one of those. And the net result is you get affordability really squeezed. The next one. But this is the trend that we saw here in Syracuse. Moderate price growth, a little fluctuation, giving away some of this price growth in here. And all of a sudden, because we did have steady growth over this period, all of a sudden, right around 2005, we saw a pop in terms of prices.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We saw a pop in terms of prices, and the reason for that was a little bit of a shallow supply. So we were a little bit slim on supply, and as builders got into the market, increased the supply, it helped restore some of the stability of the market. So this is behind us now. Nationally, not surprisingly, as we saw those double-digit price growth right here between 2003 and 2005, it caused a crimp in affordability, and we saw home sales fall. It's not on. It's all right. Over the last few months, over the last year or so, we've seen sales fall sharply, pretty steady until about August. And this is where that subprime meltdown occurred. All of a sudden, two things happened. We saw rates on home prices over $417,000 surge. Can everyone hear me? No, okay. Can you hear me now? All right. Let me try a little bit closer to my mouth. There you go. There we go. Can everybody hear me? All right. Sorry about that. Slowing pace of home sales really exaggerated. We went from 5.5 million at an annualized rate down to 5 million, but we hit a plateau, and that's important because it's telling us that the reason for this sharp slowdown can be explained in terms of the subprime meltdown, and those effects we can work with. We saw jumbo rates, those over 417,000 surge by a full percentage point, and that's easily enough. You know, if you're buying a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 house and you see your mortgage rate go from 6% to 7%, that's easily enough to scuttle a lot of deals. The problem is that that's not what's being explained to the greater market. Everybody thinks that this subprime meltdown is hurting them. In fact, if you're buying a home under that $417,000, it's resulted in lower mortgage rates, near record lows. Okay, New York existing home sales. We hit records here back in about 2004. Steadily continued to decline as prices were up at record levels. But this pattern is more representative of what was going on downstate. Remember, this is the whole state, and we've got very different markets. Unfortunately, downstate represents, in total volume, a lot more sales. So when we aggregate the statistics tell what's going on downstate, not so much locally. This is what was going on locally. We had a record, and we've slowed. It was a nice, steady slowdown, and we're still at the 5th strongest level on record. So we've moderated to a very strong level, and that's okay, because it means better for the long term. In terms of construction, we've seen a very sharp decrease in construction at the national level after many years of consecutive records. And this is the local pattern. This is very important. We had strong production back here, then all of a sudden, very, very low, very low. So during this period, sales continued, though. Sales continued to whittle away at the supply, so supply got tighter and tighter until all of a sudden, remember, we saw that spike in prices locally right around 2005 and in 2003. That's because we were having supply problems. The supply was too low, and as a result, we saw construction pick up and then slow down again. This is how a normal market should react. You get signals to the supply, the suppliers, builders, and signals to the demand. And that's how it should be reacting. That was not what was happening at the national level. There was lots of distortions that were hiding builders' ability to react promptly. Now we're faced with a strange issue. We're actually seeing rising foreclosures again at the national level. This is what you hear about in the news. But the reason for the rising foreclosures is the coincidence of a couple of things. First of all, nationally, we saw a surge in the kind of loans we normally never see people using, the interest-only, negative amortization, and something called an Alt-A loan. So it's people with low or no documentation of their income. We saw the usage of these just explode. This isn't a pattern that we really see locally, and there are reasons for it. I'll get into it later. But so we had people who were riskier getting loans. They were using riskier loans, and they were buying in areas that were risky, where there was lots and lots of recent production. And as those builders had to get rid of their inventories, they would slash the prices. And so think about it. If you've bought an ARM or an interest only, and you're planning on refinancing in a year or two because you've seen consecutive price increases, and all of a sudden builders are slashing prices, you can't refinance like you had planned on. And that's what's causing this huge run-up in foreclosures. Again, it's in the national numbers, but it's isolated in certain areas around the country. The inland market of California, Florida, and a few of the large metro areas like Washington, D.C., New York, Boston. And again, it's not even representative of those areas. It's a few counties within those metro areas.